Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again, and before we start, I would just like to announce that all my content is now available on podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and others. Just search for Ripe Stories and you will find me. And now let's dive right into the title story. And the title story starts like this. The relationship I have with my mom has been complicated since I was just a kid. I did not know it until I got a little bit older that she had some serious issues with drinking that caused a lot of problems in my house. I didn't know my dad, so to avoid ending up in foster care when my mom wasn't working or a social worker made a call, my brother and I spent a lot of time living with our grandparents. Even then, the whole family thought it was important for us to keep a good relationship with our mother, no matter what, instead of protecting us from her. We saw things that no kid should have to, and sometimes I just wished that my grandparents took us in fully instead of just once in a while. Being 16 and having a job to try and help keep the electricity on only for the money to go missing and spent on booze is just one of many examples. I knew that when I turned 18, I wanted to move out of the house and possibly take my 16-year-old brother with me. The apartment we were living in was disgusting, and no matter how much I tried to keep it clean, my mom would just make a bigger mess. Well, I then turned 18, and when she found out my plan, she lost her mind and started threatening to have me arrested for kidnapping, so I took my brother elsewhere. I had saved enough money for a cheap apartment, but I just could not leave him. So then I waited another 2 years until he turned 18 as well. During those 2 years, I met a man that kind of changed my perspective on how relationships and family should be. I saw how stable his was compared to mine, and I knew that I had to get out when I could. He proposed to me, and I could not have said yes faster if I wanted to. I think I said it about 20 times before I stopped due to needing to breathe. In those 2 years, I also got a better job and saved as much as I could for when I was ready to move out. Put together, we were able to afford a really nice house, and my husband was more than willing to let my brother come and live with us while he got his life sorted out like I did. The only issue came when I told my mom of my plans to leave and that my brother was coming with me. Mom, I told you before that you cannot leave. Me, we are both adults and we can do what we want. Mom, this has never been a good environment for us to live in. Mom, how are you gonna afford 2 homes? The bills here are piling up. Me, well, this is not my home, so it's not my problem. It's yours to pay the bills if you want to stay. Mom, if your new place has a room for your brother, then you must have another one for me to rent out. Me, no, there's no way I'm letting you come to my new house and turn it into a dump. We are both leaving, and honestly at this point, I don't think I care what happens to you. I may have sounded a little harsh, but I was at my breaking point and living in survival mode for years. I was just done with her. My new husband and some much needed therapy untaught me those things my family did when I was younger. Now the next section of this story should be that we got married, moved into the new house, and everything went great, right? Well, that's not what happened, sadly, because my mom was not about to give up getting something she wanted. The wedding was just a small thing at the courthouse and going out with friends and some close family. My mom was not invited, of course, but then a few days later, when we moved into our new home, only to find none other than my mom just sitting right there in our living room. I was furious at this point because I knew that she was gonna try and pull some crap like usual. Me, no. You get the hell out of my house right now. Mom, you're my daughter, and that means anything you have belongs to me as well. I'm the parent here, and you're the kid, so don't you dare to tell me to get out of this home. Me, I'm not a kid anymore, and you have zero right to be here. Mom, you are so unappreciative of everything that I did for you over the years. I raised you as a single mom and did everything just for you to cast me aside. If anybody deserves a new house, it's me after you wrecked the old one. Me, you wrecked the old one, and as for raising me, Grandma and Grandpa did way more than you. And hell, we raised ourselves most of the time because you were too busy getting drunk and being fired from every job you managed to get. You are not getting a house because you think coming here and throwing a fit will do a damn thing. All that is gonna happen is that we will call the police on you for trespassing. My mom did not like being called out like this and came to the conclusion that the entire thing was my husband's fault. She started going crazy about how he was poisoning my mind and turning me against her. She went up to him and slapped him hard across the face before pulling a pocket knife out and pointing it at him. My brother was able to sneak away from the scene and call the police because this was just too far. We always told each other that her putting hands on us would be a line we would not let her cross and get away with. So then the police arrived and my mom started trying to convince them that this was her house and we had broken in and tried to take it away from her. That I had also gone crazy and slapped my own husband because I was probably on drugs or something. The thing was that she was clearly drunk and the police could tell that right away. I explained that she had gotten into the house and demanded we give it to her. Then she attacked my husband and threatened him with a knife. They asked if I wanted to press charges and I was shocked how easy it was for me to say yes. My mom was taken away by the police, still saying that it was her house because I was her daughter. In court, that excuse didn't do much better, and it was clear to a judge that she was guilty for what she did. She got sentenced to prison for assault and battery, as well as threatening with a weapon. It was only for a couple of years, but who knows what she will do once she gets out. We all want a restraining order ready for her release, because we are sure she's gonna come out the same toxic person she had been our entire lives. And here, Ripe Stars, I would agree with that. I don't think that the mom is gonna change very much. In my experience, people, especially when they are older, are rarely changing that much, especially when they have been toxic their entire lives. Either way, if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because I would very much appreciate that. The next one is another revenge story. I, 29 female, don't have any kids, but I have my younger sister, 16, living with me for around 10 years. Also, we have a trampoline still in our back garden from when she was younger. Neighbor to the left of me has 4 kids and moved in a year ago. 2 weeks ago, Glasgow started getting really good weather, so the kids have been out playing constantly, not an issue. They asked if I could let the kids use the trampoline one day, so I was like sure, but only for a bit because I have friends coming over for some drinks. 7 PM comes, I ask them to go home because my 5 friends have shown up and we are going to be drinking. Cue the crying, they leave the garden upset, but hey, that's not my issue. They've been on it for 3 hours at this point. Their mom pops her head out her bedroom window and asks if they can stay in the garden longer. No? I'm not your babysitter. She is annoyed but drops it. Last week I come home from some shopping and to my surprise I find all 4 of the kids in the garden plus their younger cousin. I ask them to leave and tell them they cannot just come into my garden without me there, and they didn't even ask. They refuse to leave, so I shout up at their mom and tell her to get them out of the garden. She says, "Let them play for a bit, you don't even use it." Okay, but still, it's not your garden. Eventually, we get into an argument and they leave. She is pissed off and shouting, saying I'm being a Karen and I should let them in. I tell her not to ask again because their answer will be no. This happened again the day after, all 4 kids plus their cousin, waiting until I move the car from the driveway and heading straight into the garden. So then I wake up this morning. I have since put a lock on the trampoline, just a small one on the mesh safety enclosure, to stop them opening it up, because I'm really petty. Plus it's Saturday, I'm not working today, my day off, and I want a long lie. But no, the neighbor decides that at 9 AM this morning her kids are being fired straight out that house with breakfast bars and a bottle of water, and they head straight into the garden. So I can hear them from my window, I look out and tell them to leave. By the time I get downstairs, Mom has descended from her house and is trying to climb the fence between our gardens, shouting about how I used to let them use it and she's gonna call the cops for hitting her kids. Great, you do that. I'll be sure to show them the Ring camera footage, which coincidentally also has footage of your husband picking the lock open so your brats can use my trampoline. So long story short, entitled mother sent her kids into my garden repeatedly after being told not to, calls the cops on me for harassment and hitting her kids, and ends up getting her own husband arrested for theft and housebreaking and criminal damage. Note, I had people asking me why I couldn't just give them the trampoline. Well, she has a V-shaped garden and the smallest one on the street. Trampoline wouldn't fit there. Plus, I had already given her an old bike and swing set for her kids. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My 4-year-old has decided to become a picky eater. He doesn't have autism or anything else that causes sensory issues, he's just picky now. He used to be willing to eat anything. If he had his way, he would only eat French fries and goldfish. Obviously, I'm not gonna let him only eat those 2 things, I'm also not gonna be bossed around by a toddler. What I've been doing is that if he turns up his nose at a meal, I'll just say something like, "Alright, I guess you can eat this later," and then put the food in the fridge. If he asks for a snack, I offer him the food, and if he refuses, no snacks except for milk. At the next meal, I will offer it to him, and then if he didn't eat it before, he carries on for a bit, but he eventually gets hungry enough that he will eat whatever it was he was refusing to eat before. He's never gone more than a day of refusing to eat. If he did, I would probably feed him something else. My mom friends are horrified I would do this to my kid and tell me I'm old-fashioned. I also feel like the worst mother in the world when my kid is whining about how hungry he is. For the record, my husband is completely on board with this method, so Reddit, am I the a-hole for letting my toddler go hungry? And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this parenting in the comments. Personally, I would say that OP is definitely not the a-hole, because you clearly have to show boundaries to a kid. If you let your toddler boss you around, that sets a very bad precedent for the future. I mean, sure, you should not let your kid go hungry for 1 or 2 days or something, but if they don't want to eat, you have to be strict. Anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments. And someone on Reddit said, not the a-hole, toddlers are terrorists and we don't negotiate with terrorists. I'll say that sometimes the food refusal is about getting some power and control rather than the foods. If you can, maybe give him a choice at mealtimes between 2 different things. That might help. And by the way, that's a brilliant idea. Anyway, comment number 2, my mom did this with me. Her go-to line was, "This is not a restaurant. You will eat what I cook and you're not getting anything else." I'm sure she didn't enjoy the experience either, but what you gonna do? Kids are a-holes sometimes. And then OP posted an update to the story in which she said, I don't want to force him to eat things he hates, I do want to promote his individuality. I feel like I have no other choice but to be strict, because if I'm not, he would have me serving him an unhealthy diet. Also, I don't want him to grow up thinking he's entitled to order me or anyone else to cook special meals for him. And by the way, I do season my food and cook it in other ways besides steaming or boiling. I would never let him not eat for a long time like some of you have described, or try to serve him uneaten food for days on end like Mommy Dearest. I would cave at that point. And the next one is a story about a terribly entitled aunt. So without getting too political, we recently had an election in my country. My aunt supported one side while her husband and adult offspring supported the other side. The election didn't go the way my aunt wanted it to. Aunt proceeded to flip her crap, breaking things, yelling, and even going as far as to set her daughter's "I voted" sticker on fire. Her husband then called the police. The cops declined to arrest her for anything but suggested that she find a different place to stay for the night. This happened yesterday in New Jersey. Fast forward to 2 AM today, here I am sleeping peacefully in my home with my family over 500 miles from all that drama. My fence alarm goes off, waking me up. I don't know if it is a bear or a trespasser, so I get my pants on and grab my shotgun just to be safe. It turns out my aunt cut the lock off my front gate because she couldn't get in and I was not answering my phone. Why did she have bolt cutters in her car? Well, so I safely stow my weapon and ask her what the hell. She starts crying and screaming. Mind you, this is at 2 AM in a quiet rural community about how the devil took her family and they threw her out. And she says that since she has nowhere else to go, I need to let her in so she can stay in my guest room for a while. I told her one of my guildies is using that room right now. The room is occupied. This person came from Texas all the way to West Virginia to hang out with me. I'm not gonna toss them out with 30 seconds of notice because my aunt showed up. So then she decides to call the police and tell them that I'm keeping her from entering her home. We are out in the woods here, so the cops don't get here quick. 4:41 AM, the cops show up. I see them talking to her in my driveway. She shows them the bolt cutters and the ruined lock. A few minutes later, the officer knocks on my door. Your tenant claims that. I immediately cut him off and tell him that I don't have a tenant, I own and occupy the structure. I offer to show him the deed. Well, this woman claims. I cut him off again. What's the address on her ID say? At this point, the cop is pissed at me, I can tell, so I try to de-escalate the situation. Look man, she doesn't live here. She has never lived here. That's my aunt, she lives in New Jersey. Please check her ID card. The cop calms down a bit and lets me know that he will talk to her and then come back. 10 minutes later, the cops come back to my door. 3 of them this time, not just the one from earlier. One of them had stripes and a rocker on his arm, so I could tell he was important. He asks me if there's any way Aunt can stay here for the night because she is too drunk to drive, so he cannot let her back on the road. This woman just drove from New Jersey to West Virginia drunk. Thank God she did not kill anyone. I told them that she cannot stay here, but that I'm sure there's room in the local jail. The cop asks me if she can just sleep in her car in my driveway and leave in the morning, and I told him absolutely not. When she wakes up in the morning, I would just have to call them to get her off my property, so that would solve nothing. I asked them to remove her from my property. Long story short, her car got towed and she is in the drunk tank, no charges pending for the night. So much for sleeping tonight. My kids need to be up for school soon. And the next one, even quiet HOAs breed corruption. I moved into my development out in the boonies back in December after just saying screw it because my wife and I were tired of homes going under contract as we were walking in the front door, or we would like a place only to have our realtor look and find out there was a multi-way bidding war happening and the latest offer was already $50,000 to $100,000 over our budget. We got a new construction house right at the top of our budget. Things seemed reasonable, maybe too reasonable. First, the HOA docs we got were definitely just a template some lawyer copy and pasted and just did a find and replace on. We have no community pool or playground, no parking lots, no little parks, and then the management company did not even bother to collect our dues. Then in March we got a new management company. It turns out it is a two-person management company of a realtor for state licensing requirement and the property manager. They are nice people, but I'm not sure why we even need them. We are a 17-house subdivision and this is where things get interesting. They sent out a follow-up letter with names of the board members. I go hunting on GIS and find out which house they are, more on this in a second. My wife and I run out for errands and on our way back we see a guy mowing the front common area where the sign is and that's it, but there's no truck or anything else nearby. My wife joked that this is what $1,000 per year pays for. I mentioned I thought the guy looked like one of our neighbors, as I am sure I have seen that mower before. Sure enough, a little while later, the mower comes down the street and goes into the neighbor's driveway and parks behind his truck and he goes in the house. I go back on GIS, and by the way guys, if anyone knows what GIS means, please let me know, and I find out it is our HOA vice president. That's a huge conflict of interest as according to the bylaws, the board is unpaid unless the majority of the homeowners vote a provision for the board to be paid. Second, we have a $1,000 line item on the budget for lawn maintenance, so I candidly asked our management company for a list of vendors and invoices so I could see where the budget was getting its numbers from. I cannot wait to see what I am provided. As I was also reviewing the bylaws, I also found out that while the board terms are 1 year, the president and vice president seats are voted on by a 3-person board. The only position that is actually voted on by the homeowners is the secretary, which means a president and vice president can just keep electing themselves to the board. Or the vice president and secretary can elect a body in the subdivision. We have also noticed that the president and vice president have the most HOA violations. The vice president has an unfinished shed in his backyard, the president has a basketball hoop in the road. Our rules say that they are not allowed in the road and must be in a lot's driveway. His kids' bikes are left out by the road, his garbage cans are always left out at the end of the road. Both let their dogs run around unrestricted, no fence or invisible fence, and the rules also say that any animal outside needs to be under the control of a responsible person. I would hardly consider a 4-year-old responsible. Basically, I am tired of paying fees when there is a sea of violations around me. As much as I loathe and hate HOAs, we all agreed to the rules when we bought our homes, so I believe that, love them or hate them, we all need to follow the rules or we all need to vote and dissolve the HOA. But since there is money involved, I doubt the latter will happen, so instead I am documenting everything carefully, and when the time comes I am going to dump a giant complaint on the department within my state that is responsible for HOAs. My wife and I were already planning on selling our house and moving to a place with better schools in a few years when our kid reaches school age. I'm already counting the days. Effin' hate these corrupt privatized governments from hell. And an update to the even quiet HOAs breed corruption story. What a month it has been. After the state regulation department essentially told me to F off and we couldn't give a damn, predictably, and after our management company finally got us in contact with our president after basically refusing to give out any of his info, my wife and I had a nice chat this afternoon with him. He fills us in on how the board members got their positions, how our management company came to be. Essentially, they were the cheapest on the list of vendors, and the old adage holds true. You get what you pay for. And why we saw our vice president mowing the lawn. Which, yes, there's definitely embezzlement, but it is because they didn't look into the proper way of doing things financially, because they are not accountants. So they are trying to find out how to set up a board meeting, and my wife, who is an accountant, is going to help them get our budget fixed to eliminate the embezzlement. He also told us the 6 most glorious words others on this sub would love to hear. We are working to disband it, followed up with the next greatest set of words. Don't worry about any of the rules and regulations, they are not being enforced. We were told that no one here actually wants an HOA. He then asked us what our other concerns were. Immediately my wife and I were like, with that being said, our concerns no longer exist. I am looking forward to doing whatever the heck I want on my property now. I think I am going to get my driveway paved, put up a playground for my kids without ARC approval. Hell, I'm going to hang up a forbidden clothesline. There's a ton of work ahead and we still have to keep paying our fees, but it is so nice to throw the CC&Rs into the recycle bin. And before anyone says anything, we have 0 assets other than cash in the bank, which I cannot wait to see refunded to the owners. We are working on what to do with the common area and the property the HOA owns. There's like a strip that circles the development behind everyone's lot for some reason. Our road is public, so the state is responsible for it. We are still in the very early stages as the HOA just got handed over to the homeowners, and we the homeowners have said thanks, but no. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.